Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and get started today. It's going to be kind of a nice little simple class. So we're going to be talking about the roles of firefighters and fire investigators. It's part of my Fire Instructor 1 course, so it won't be that long of a class and we'll get done. So the outcome of this class is each student should be able to identify the outcome of the learning objective and pass a 5-question written test. And then key takeaway moments is you should be able to know components of a suspicious fire. Our learning objective today is identify the roles and responsibilities of firefighters and fire investigators at a fire investigation of a suspicious fire. So, determining fire cause. Simple incidents will only require the expertise of on-scene firefighters. So all of us that are sitting in the room, we can determine if it's an accidental or electrical fire or something of that nature. The more complex incidents or possible crime scenes, like for example, the Salisbury fire that they just had a few days ago that had killed a 17-year-old and all that, is going to require assistance from law enforcement and fire investigators from either the state or county level. The firefighter roles and responsibilities. The fire chief is the legally responsible to determine origin and cause in most jurisdictions. So for Van Dyke, it would be Brandon, Fargo would be Gary. The fire chief delegates this authority to fire officers and firefighters at the scene. So therefore, if, just say Brandon thinks there might be a suspicious fire within, he might pull some of the officers and maybe me off to the side to look at it. And so that's where the fire chief would come into play with going through and delegating. To recognize and collect information about the fire and its behavior. You need to do that during the response, upon arrival, when entering the structure or the scene, and while locating and extinguishing the fire. For example, when you're going through a house and you're noticing one room has a little spot of fire and then another room has just a little other pile of fire, then at the end of the hall there might be a table on fire. That might look suspicious. So you keep that in mind, you take mental notes, you go through, you do your normal procedure, you come back out, you let an officer know or the fire chief on scene. The first arriving firefighters should make note of vehicles and people in the area, status of doors and windows, evidence of forced entry by anyone other than firefighters, condition of the contents inside or around the structure, indications of unusual fire behavior or more than one point of origin. Just like what I was explaining, the different rooms might have different fires in it. There might be one in a closet, one in the middle of the room, or what we call a trailer, which is from one room to another spread out by gasoline, diesel, or some type of ignition. The firefighter actions can affect origin and cause determination. So have an alert and open mind and perform judicious and careful overhaul. So basically don't be going into a room and just start tearing the room to pieces if you think it's a suspicious fire in that room particularly. So another firefighter responsibility, refrain from expressing personal opinions about probable cause to anyone, because whoever you tell, they become part of the investigation also. Then after the investigator arrives, make statements only to him or her only. Because once you start making statements to other people, you get other people involved. Public statements should only be made after the investigator and officer in charge agree and give permission, which in some cases, in some departments, that would be the PIO, which is a public information officer. That public information officer will go through, give what they need to the press, to the news, whoever. Written records can be kept about what is witnessed at the scene. Written records is very, very important. And that's why you guys have an example of one of our report forms. On the report form, when it says mutual aid, make sure that is received if an investigator arrives on scene, because that investigator is providing mutual aid. And under the method of the type of action taken, you need to put extinguishment and investigate. Because if this report gets basically subpoenaed to a case, you need to have this, and it needs to be filled out correctly. The fire investigator's role and responsibilities. The fire investigators help conduct detailed investigations and analysis beyond initial origin and cause determination. So they will be the ones to go through and do the most expertise dig through everything. They will be taking a little duster, they will be scraping stuff off, and firefighters will participate in that usually with a hose, and they'll have to wash off evidence and bag it up. Sworn police officers in many departments are sometimes fire investigators under certain qualification and certification. They may interview or ask firefighters for assistance, which that will go into play with the hose line on just trying to clean off evidence and make sure everything's good for packaging. The responsibility for fire investigation may lie with a variety of entities. Special investigation or arson units, such as the State Fire Marshal's Office, will either bring in 1 or 2 investigators or a whole team of investigators for an incident. Fire department and law enforcement working together, we know that's hard, but sometimes when a situation like this, fire departments and law enforcement need to work together, more than likely with detectives. Police department or sheriff's office has sole responsibility because they are the ones that can handle and maintain evidence. The responsibility lies with state fire marshal, state police, or other state agencies. And that goes in with everything else that was talked about because of evidence handling. Fire investigation of assisting investigators. Often necessary when cause cannot be determined, there is a fatality or an incendiary fire is suspected. Provide professional assistance, accurate information, and be courteous to the fire investigator. Firefighters and investigators have the same mission, protecting the public. That is the biggest thing that you really have to worry about. Because if you're digging in through a house and there's an explosive for some reason, you gotta protect the public on that. Other investigators. Insurance company investigators or private investigators. Those are the ones that you mainly have to worry about because they will more than likely break the line. The fire investigator will put a caution tape or a red fire investigator tape around the house or on the door, and more than likely they will probably break it. So you got to watch for the insurance company and private investigators because they'll just go in, get their business done, and go out. Other investigators may interview you. You may be required to provide testimony in court, work with these officials in a professional and courteous manner, and provide unbiased and factual testimony. No opinions whatsoever because that can hinder the prosecution of whoever set the fire. Insurance adjusters. They're going to visit the site, collect police and fire records, create diagrams, interview witnesses, take photos, and make contract services as specialized fire and arson investigators. And so when I say the insurance or the private, and they're going to visit the site, is just like if they break the barrier or the tape line, and they go in and they do what they need to do, basically. And they're going to go through, and they're on their own little mission. They're going to be doing all of their own diagrams, they're interviewing witnesses, And you're gonna have people coming up and asking you, why am I getting asked so many questions? And when you have multiple investigators on the scene for private investigators insurance, fire marshal's office, or even local investigators themselves, there's gonna be a lot of confusion. So you just gotta be aware of that and be courteous to the public for when they come and start asking questions. So a review question. What is the fire chief's role at a fire investigation? What do you guys think? What's the main role for a fire chief at a fire investigation?
Gather the officers and find out exactly where the fire started and if it's a possible arson scene.
Sounds good. There's one little thing. There's another one too. They are the legal person to determine a cause, to get another investigator in, and to basically go through and be that determining cause. A little discussion question. Why should firefighters refrain from discussing personal opinions regarding fire cause? So, why should we refrain from having our own opinion when it comes to a fire cause?
It can hinder prosecutions.
It can hinder prosecution.
It's not very polite. It upsets the apple cart,
Yep.
and it's probably, well, it's not usually true stuff a lot of times.
Yeah.
It could just be